Hey everyone, we've got about 30 seconds before we get started here. I'm so glad you're here and look forward to going through DevOps and CI/CD with Janna Loeffler. We'll get started in just a minute. All right, let's get going. So my name is Paul Merrill. Thank you for being here today. Beaufort Fairmont is the company that I work for. We do automated testing. It's what we do. We focus on solving a couple different problems. How do we sync up testing and development in agile and DevOps environments? And also, how do we automate regression testing? We do that through consulting, through training, and through our dedicated experts, which can support your team when you need us. We do that across the US. We don't work very much outside of the US, although every once in a while we work in Canada or somewhere nearby. We've been around for about 10 years. The last 4 years have been pretty fun and interesting, and we've seen a lot of successes with our customers. And we started building up that customer base and building out our infrastructure. So thanks for being here. Janna's, you can probably see Janna. She's going to join us in just a minute or two. I've got her information here. Make sure to write down her Twitter handle or go ahead and just follow her because she always has great stuff on Twitter and good insights there. As we get started, I've got a few things I want to remind you of and tell you about. As always, the upcoming events. So TISCA, the Triangle Software Quality Association. That's an organization, it's a nonprofit organization here in the Research Triangle. That's where the triangle part comes from, in North Carolina, in the US. And we focus on helping people in the Research Triangle who are testers and in the testing world get better, build their careers, build their skills. I've been a part of that on the board for a number of years. This is our biennial conference. We do it this year in Durham, and I'll be giving 2 talks. The first is a workshop, and it's called Dev Drone Ops. So I figured, hey, if we can call it Dev Test Ops, if we can call it Dev Sec Ops, if we can call it these things, let's call it Dev Drone Ops and have a little fun. So what we'll be doing in that workshop, if you're coming to it, is we will be doing some really cool challenges with these little drones. So make sure to join us if you haven't signed up yet. There may still be a way to do it. The official ticketing closed, but if you're still interested, ping me and we may be able to get you in. So looking forward to seeing some folks in Durham, the 26th and 27th. I'll also be talking about ROI on the second day. And we have so many great speakers. It's going to be a really great time. Looking forward to it. Angie Jones is our keynote speaker. Can't wait to hear her keynote. Our theme is the space of testing this year, and her keynote is based on that theme. So it should be a lot of fun. We're doing some first ever things this year at TISCA. We've got CAST coming out, or AST, the Association for Software Testing. They're going to do a testing lab for us, and I'm looking forward to that very, very much. You get a free book when you walk in the door, and some other free stuff. Some wonderful sponsors are joining us, and they'll have wonderful swag as always. And of course, Beaufort Fairmont is a sponsor as well. So we look forward to seeing you there. Make sure to stop me, say hi if you're going to be there, and let's make sure to catch up, especially if you have needs around test automation. We'd love to help you out, especially local companies. It'd be nice to work local companies to local companies. Wouldn't that be great? So STPCon is coming up in the later part of March and the first part of April, and I'll be doing my first keynote. And I've been working with it. The first iteration I did in front of folks from a script. I've never written a script for a talk before. It didn't work. It was trash. I threw it out and started over. The new one is going to be much better. It's still on the same theme. It still works with the same abstract. Make sure to take a look at STPCon for what that's about. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also doing Dev Drone Ops there. So if you're out on the West Coast and you want to join us for that, make sure to look up STPCon and join us in San Diego the last part of March and the first part of April. I'd love to see you there. So as we're getting started here, you guys know by now that I really like to thank people. And I left one off last time and I was reminded of it, Thomas H. So I made sure to put him at the beginning of the list this time. But a lot of folks here, and they're all people who maybe they've said something nice, maybe they've been supportive of the company or me in some way, shape, or form. So I created the B list. I want to thank people and be gracious as much as I can. And if you have interacted with me lately or interacted with Beaufort Fairmont lately, and it looks like your name is there and that last name's initial is yours, it probably is you. So thank you for whatever it is you did. It's always nice to work with people and to get their help on stuff. This isn't a one-person thing. It takes a village to raise a business, apparently. So I need some help. I'm looking for this job. So I need a robot framework coach. It's a short-term engagement. It'll be about 3 to 5 months, 50% travel, 1 week in Western New York, 1 week remote. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. I don't have any flexibility on it unless you live in Western New York and you want to work on site 100% of the time for this client. So remote and only in the US remote. So I'm sorry if you live outside of the US, it just isn't a possibility for this contract. I prefer North Carolina, Colorado, Illinois, or New York. But if you live outside of one of those and you have good skills as a robot framework person or person with that experience, and you're a good coach, this is really the key part. If you're a really good coach, come on out and join me for this. It'll be a lot of fun. It's a wonderful client that we're working with on this, and I can't wait to see where things go with it. Another one I've told you about several times, and we're still looking for more people with this, is an automation engineer with 3+ years of automation, focusing on data testing, UI automation, some other tools that are not open source. This one also remote, but US only, a lot less traveling on this one, year-plus contract. Would love to have you help me on that too. If you want to know about these, feel free to reach out to me here or on one of the Slack channels. At the end of today, we will give away a $50 Amazon gift card. And I love giving these away. It's so nice to see people excited about this and to hear what they've spent it on. Sometimes they tell me, hey, Paul, I got some movies, or hey, I got a new book. And that's cool. I like being able to help people in that way. A couple points of information as we get going here. You may be interacting with us on the web. You may be interacting with us from a native control panel on your machine. Maybe it's Mac, maybe it's Windows, and I don't know exactly what it looks like. But you do have the opportunity to type in questions into whichever interface you have. And you have a few other things. You ought to be able to see my screen right now. You ought to be able to see me. My face will drop off here in a moment. We'll just have Janna. But as we go along, if you have questions, make sure to write them in here. And at the end of the session, we'll answer as many questions as we can, but go ahead and start typing them. Usually it doesn't work as well for me to just call on somebody and take them off of mute, but if you can type your questions out, that would be ideal. We're also going to do a couple polls, and you'll be able to see those on your screen and take those. And those will help us get a better idea and help Janna get a better idea of who you all are and what information you want. So I've talked about enough. So let me take Janna off of mute if I can find the right buttons. Hey, Janna, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to do this.
Good, well, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy talking with you and getting to know you. I'm really excited about this.
Oh, good. I am too.
Good, excellent. So before we get started, let's do a couple polls and see where people are. Is that all right with you?
Perfect.
Okay, so folks, if you'll just take this, there are 4 of them, and we're going to do them fast. So the first one is, what is your role? So are you a tester, developer, manager at any level, automation engineer? Do you have the role of DevOps? This is something that I've seen a bit in recent years, is that we have people with that role. And I'm going to make this really quick today. We're not going to wait for a bunch of people to vote, so vote quickly. Perfect. I'm going to close up the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you, Janna, and with everyone else.
Awesome.
So quite a few managers.
And, yeah, and a lot of automation engineers. So this is good.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm going to hide those results. We're going to do the second poll. So what is your experience with Git? So if you can take this quickly here. This is the second out of 4 polls. So what is your experience with Git? And if you don't know what Git is, the answer is none. So I'm going to close this up, and we're going to share the results and see what people said.
Okay, some, perfect.
So and 87% some or a lot. I think that's saying something. Perfect. So hide those results, and we're going to do 2 more. So next, what is your experience with Docker? And Docker is one of those things in the last 5 or 8 years has just become so prolific, and it seems to be one of those things everybody is talking about. But how many people have worked with it? A lot or some? Let's see.
Or none. Oh, wow. Okay.
or none. So that should help us kind of manage how we talk through this. Excellent. So what is your experience? Last one. What is your experience with continuous integration and continuous deployment? So continuous integration, it may be continuous delivery. It kind of depends on how you want to define that D, I guess.
Yeah.
What's your experience with CI/CD? Okay, so 83%. We're getting a lot of good voting here too. This is cool. 83%. Some are a lot. Excellent. So I'm going to hide those.
Perfect.
Gina, I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Fabulous.
Let's get going. Thank you so much for being here and good luck.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to start off here with a little presentation going on automation, CI/CD, and DevOps. I'm going to start out though with telling you a little bit about me so you can understand just kind of where I'm coming from. I was born in Fridley, Minnesota. I live in beautiful, warm Davie, Florida. I've had over 15 years of industry experience working as a software developer or a software automation engineer or a DevOps engineer. And currently I am a quality engineering manager at Ultimate Software. So I like to start this off by saying, just kind of going through what is CI/CD, because it sounds like some of us have some experience with it, but that D at the end is really kind of confusing. I've also heard from people that, well, I have a build pipeline, so obviously I'm doing CI and CD. So continuous integration is really having those automated checks and automated artifact creation. That's not actually going out and deploying it to any environment. It's just that initial integration of your checks and your code. Then when we move into continuous delivery, which some of you maybe when you say CI/CD could mean continuous delivery, means you're taking that a next step forward. You've got your continuous integration doing your automated checks and artifact creation. Then you are moving on now to an automated deployment to staging or test environments, but you're still doing that manual deployment to production. So this is where I would say, in my experience, a lot of companies are, because they like to have a little bit more control. They'll trust their automated checks all the way up through their staging environment. They'll pause at their staging environment to do some validation, and then they'll do a manual deployment to production. But you may mean continuous deployment, and that means automation throughout it all. And that's kind of the big thing, is looking at automation and automated checks, automated deployments. This is just very hands-off. So we're looking at a typical CI/CD pipeline. This is one that I'm going to be working through with GitLab. And you start out with some code. You make a commit, you may have a branch, but in the end you merge or commit, which kicks off your CI pipeline. So this is a really kind of graphical way to visualize the difference between your CI and your CD. So if you see here, we're running some unit tests, some integration tests. This is where I throw out my definition of some different testing terms. So we've all heard of verification and validation. I like to define verification as, does the code work as my developer intended? Is it technically sound? Is it working the way that they think it should based on the programming that they've done? And that's really where I focus a lot of my CI. It should be on, what are the quick, lightweight tests that I can do to really check that this code is operating as intended. And once it's operating as intended, well, then I can package it up and deploy it out to either a review or a staging environment and do some further testing. I may have actual users look at it at that point in time. I'll do some validation. Is it working in the way that I intended it to work? Is it meeting my customers' needs? And that's where I'll get into some more UI automation, things like that. And then, of course, we'll go out to production. Now, if you have a continuous deployment pipeline, that doesn't mean you don't test. Automation throughout this, automated checks, your verification and validation is an essential part of going throughout there, because your goal is to really produce high quality code and deploy high quality code. And you can't do that without at least running through some checks. But you don't have continuous deployment unless it's 100% automated from end to end. So as we look at a simple GitLab build pipeline, you can kind of see with the graphic why it's called a build pipeline, because it kind of looks like pipes, and your code flows from left to right all the way through it. So you have this pipeline, which is a set of one or more jobs, and those jobs are really those individual tasks. You're checking your coverage, running your unit tests, maybe running some integration tests, and then you have different stages along the way. And those stages, some people refer to them as stages, some people refer to them as gates, but it's really, you know, how we break up these different tasks and then the environments in which we are deploying to. So there we have it. If you can see right now, CI/CD is obviously not just running, having a build pipeline, because you can have a build pipeline. You could go build, staging, prod, but without those tests, you're not doing continuous integration. So part of this, and the secret sauce to DevOps, as some of you may have heard, is configuration as code. So why do we care about it? Configuration as code is the formal migration of configuration between environments backed by a version control system. We've really moved to configuration as code in DevOps because, once again, it's pretty automated. You have the versioning of changes, those traceability of those changes, and then it also promotes automation and standardization. So I, as a human, don't have to go in through a GUI and set things. When I first started getting into build pipelines and running automation with my build pipelines, it was all through a GUI. Actually, it was with Bamboo and going through and setting up, and I can't tell you the number of times where a test may have been non-deterministic and a developer went in and just like, oh, I'm just going to change something here. And now all I saw was a green pipeline because I had no idea what changes happened or what was going on. So really, when you start doing things with configuration as code, it provides that traceability, it provides that versioning, it provides some accountability, which is great with the automation and standardization. So the way GitLab works, and a lot of configuration as code works, is using a syntax called, or a kind of a standard called YAML. Now, YAML's kind of fun because it started out as an acronym for yet another markup language, but then they realized it was so much more than a markup language. So they said, YAML now stands for YAML ain't markup language. So if it ain't markup language, what is it? Well, it's really a human-friendly data serialization standard for all programming languages, which makes it really awesome because it is for all programming languages, and it's human-friendly. You can go through, you can read it, you can understand it pretty easily. It's very similar to XML or JSON. It provides those similar capabilities, but it's not as complex. And it's just, like I said, it's more human-friendly. I find it easier to read. It also allows you to do a lot of powerful configuration settings without having to really learn a more complex code type like CSS, JavaScript, PHP. You don't necessarily need to know your programming, the developer's programming language, to be able to write YAML and create a build pipeline. So with all of that, the fun time, which is the live coding demo time. Woo, everybody's favorite. So I'm going to pull up here. I have in GitLab. Now I'm going to talk, I don't want to talk too much about the tool, but I want to do a quick introduction to GitLab. This is GitLab. As you can see on my URL up here, it's gitlab.com. So this is my own personal account. So you can go out today, go to gitlab.com, sign up, have your own source control management tool and repo. It provides you with such functionalities as issues, you know, CI/CD pipelines. It has integrations with Kubernetes. It also has its own container registry. So in this, we're going to walk through some of the things. Just I wanted to point out that This is actually my own personal account and not an enterprise account. So anything that I do today, you can go to gitlab.com and play with for yourself. All right, and on that note, we're going to start out here. So I've created this little welcome app. It's a simple Go app. I'm a huge Golang fan. So I've got this, of course, live demo, yay. I've got this little Go app, and it's just honestly a little website. You don't even have to know Golang for this demo, but I wanted to show you, yep, I've got a little Go app. So if I'm a tester going on to this, the first thing I'm going to want to do is clone my repository. So I'm going to copy this URL. And for those of you who are somewhat familiar with Git, that's great. For those of you who aren't familiar with Git, I'm going to use the command line interface. I like CLI, I'm comfortable with it, but for those of you who may not be or don't have those commands right off the top of your head, there's this new website that has been hitting Twitter and I have started to really love. So it allows you to do plain English, and then it tells you what the git command is and has a nice little copy function there. But I just thought I'd show that to you real quick if you need it. So here I am, I'm in my little terminal, and I'm gonna clone this. Oops, this is what happens when you do a dry run first. Take two. So now I'm cloning my app. I also have my IDE open, so I'm gonna go into that the little folder that it creates. So I have Atom here, and now I have my welcome app, and you'll see I've got Git, I've got static templates, GitLab, YAML, Docker file, README, everything that was in that repository is now on my local machine. Fabulous. And I see here that my developer, I'm playing the role of a developer, has done an awesome job by already looking at containerizing this, but creating an initial build pipeline for me. And this is where I'm going to say, this is where you're not quite doing CI/CD unless you have those automated checks. Because you can have a build pipeline. I have a build pipeline here. I can actually even go to my pipelines stage and say, oh, look, right here, a build passed. So this was just a build. It went through, built my Go app, and it succeeded. So, and it created even a binary artifact, all sorts of things like that. But there's no check. So there's no way to really ensure that this is a high quality piece of code. All I know is that it built. If I really want to get into continuous integration, I'm going to need to add some tests. So let's take a moment here and look at how I even got that build pipeline to begin with. Now, GitLab will allow you to be lazy, which I'm very appreciative. You can always go up here and they say CI/CD configuration. And what that does is if you add it, it creates this .gitlab CMI YAML file. So this is really the YAML file that's going to be your configuration as code and determine your build pipeline. So let's look at that. The nice thing about GitLab 2 is if you are lazy, you can say this is a template. Maybe you don't necessarily know everything how to build your application. You can go in here and you can apply a template. I did that because like I said, it's great. I'm going to cancel out of here and walk through this with you. So this is our current build pipeline. I've got my Docker image here, which is Golang, because I need to make sure Golang is installed for me to able to run a Go app. It's told me I needed a repo name, so I copied my repo name from up here. Now, the good and the bad news about Go and a lot of our scripting languages, there is going to be some setup for it. And to work with that standardization and that automation and that consistency, the nice thing is you can put it right here in your build pipeline. That way you don't have to be worrying about, do I have everything installed? Do I have all of my paths set up correctly? If I change machines, how am I going to make sure that I have everything installed? I have all these paths set. I can set that up right here in my configuration. So in my before script, I can set up my go path. I can set up my project directories and everything like that. So you'll see here, I've got some $ capital letters. So when you have a $ capital letter, that's going to be a variable name. So you notice this is my repo name. It matches my repo name up there, and it's setting my go path and working with all of that. So you will see that go path though itself is not set up, or there should be certain times like CI, project directory, things like that, that may not have a specific variable. You can always go to the GitLab documentation. They have some baked in variables, which also make it super easy. The next thing I'm going to talk about are some of the stages. So if we look at our build pipeline, we'll notice that we have right here, I have two stages. I have test and build, which directly correspond to the stages that are going on here. Now I have three here, which is test, build, and deploy. And I'll explain to you when we get down a little bit further why we're not seeing deploy in our pipeline. And then underneath our stages, if I were to click in here, I'm a graphical person, so I like to see. So here's my test stage. I can see I have a job that says format, and my build stage, and I have a job that says compile, which right here, format, compile. So we always start with what tasks do I need to get done? What do I need to do? Well, this one we're calling format. You could call it test. You can call it whatever you want. And then when do I want that format job to run? Well, I want it to run during the test stage. And then what steps do I need to have it run? Well, Go comes with its built-in test framework. So right here, it's formatting, it's vetting, and then it's testing. And then the next thing I want it to do is build, or compile. So I have this compile, it's under my build stage. I've got my Go script to build an artifact and create an artifact. So the nice thing about this is, as you can see, I can have multiple jobs. Maybe I want to have one of these be unit tests and the next one be integration tests and run a couple different test scripts. I can have jobs run in parallel. So jobs will run in parallel, stage will run serially. So you define stages and what order you want them to be here in all the jobs and when you want it to run. So if you have multiple jobs under a stage, it will run in parallel. So that gets you some time saving with some parallelization and fun things like that. So if I go back to my pipelines, I will notice I have a test stage here, and it's running through things, but there's no test files. So it's not really testing or doing anything. So as a tester, I'm going to start freaking out now and saying, well, we need to have at least some sort of test. So let's go back here. I'm going to go back to my terminal here, and I want to say, okay, I want to start testing things, but I don't want to hold up any of my developers. I don't want to hold up any of the automation that's currently going on. And the way that I can do that is by creating a new branch. So I'm going to create my own branch here, and let's see what happens when I do that with this GitLab CI YAML. So I'm going to check out new branch. I'm going to name it test, and I'm going to create it off of our master branch. So now I have this new branch test, and you can see right here that I am on that test branch. I have all the files and everything up to date as I had in master. So I can go over to my IDE over here, my editor, and I can start creating my tests. Now, for the sake of time, I pre-coded this because I want to make sure we get through as much as possible. So I created a little unit test here that goes in and it just does a basic null validation of verification of our code. You'll notice here that it doesn't open up the UI, nothing like that, but I now have this nice little test that my pipeline should call. So now that I've done that, I want to make sure I add that. And then I'm going to commit it. So it went in, it added it, it made a commit. Now I want to push that back up to the repository. Oops, this is what happens when I. See, this is what happens when you do live demos. All right, so now let's go back to our project overview. And I have this main.test. Oh, I pushed it. This is what happens when I follow things too. It actually pushed it straight to master, but that's fine. We'll fix that in the next one. So I've got this main little test and it kicked off my pipeline. And we can see that this is running. Now, a lot of us mad that I did that. I should have created a new branch, but it's fine. A lot of us will, our developers will go in and they'll create feature branches. So this is where we'll cover some of this. So let's say my dev has a new branch. We'll just call it dev. So now I'm on my dev branch here because let's say our BA didn't like our something in there. So before we get there, you know what? Why don't I go ahead and show you what this web app actually does. So I usually leave things to my note. Like I said, there was a Docker image in there, and that's where, while that's running through the pipeline, we'll kind of talk about that. So I have a Docker file in here. Let's look at this Docker file. It's gonna go get everything that I need, install this app, run this app, and expose port 8080. Pretty simple. So if I list things out, you'll see that my Docker file's in there, so I should be able to just build a Docker image. It'll go through, go through everything that's in that Docker file, create a Docker image for me. And this is awesome. So this is what this allows me to do is, even though I clone this repository, I don't have to know Go. I don't have to make sure my Go path is set up. I don't have to make sure all my dependencies are set up, because those are all set within this container. And that's great, because that removes some of the different dependencies, removes some of the different installations. It removes some of the works on my machine issues that we all run into as testers. So now that I have an image built, I can go ahead and run that image, and that will actually run my little Go application. So let's look at this real quick. So what I am saying is I'm going to use Docker, run. I'm going to map my ports 8080. I'm going to call it W instance, and I'm going to base it off of the image that I just created. So let's go ahead, give that a chance, cross my fingers, because you know how well live demos go. Great, I've got a little message saying that it's listening on port 8080. So fabulous. get this little Go app. It says welcome unknown. It's February 24th at 18:34:13. Yay, fabulous. Okay, but we don't like unknown. We want to make it say anonymous. So my developer did this. Let's go through this real quick. I want to add a new branch. Let's see, switch to that branch, or how about from another branch? Because I've got that branch, that dev branch where my devs are going to update. Say they're going to update this main.go to no longer say unknown. It's going to say anonymous because anonymous sounds just so much nicer than anything else. All right. And we're going to commit that, but actually I want to make sure I'm on the dev branch. So let's fix that again because we don't want to be committing to master because that could screw up things. So we'll try this again. All right. We're going to commit to dev branch and so people know, updated unknown to anonymous. All right, now let's go ahead and I'm not going to do a merge request quite yet. I'm going to go to my pipeline. So now you can see my pipeline is actually running on that dev branch alone. My master completed before. Let's go ahead and check that because we ran that test. So I can always go back. It ran that welcome test, job succeeded. I have no longer saying no more. So yay, this is fabulous. And pipelines. And now my dev is running. Now I created this dev branch off of the master before after I updated that main.go test. So if all goes as planned, as live demos always go as planned, this one should actually fail. Because if we look at our files here under dev, let's look at that main test go here. Oh, well, it's looking for unknown, but we updated that already to anonymous. So our pipeline should fail. Haha, and it failed. Yay. Fabulous. So we got here, it got anonymous, wanted unknown, because that's what our devs opened it for. But let's look at our main pipeline. Our main pipeline doesn't have that code in it, right? But we go to our details, our repository files. I look at my main.go. I'm on the master branch right there. And that still says unknown because all the development work has been happening on my development branch. So the nice thing about that is I can go to my CI/CD pipeline and if I want to run my pipeline, say I want to run it for master again, that should still pass. All of my changes are in a separate branch running my separate thing. So this shows me a way that I can add tests and debug my tests without breaking the main pipeline. It's all using branches, which is super cool and super nice. So let's go back and let's see what happens now when I fix that test. Let's go ahead and fix that test. I want to fix it on our dev branch. Go ahead and edit it. Great. So all of this has to do with right now with our development branch and working on a development branch and going through and doing all of this. So let's look a little bit more into some more automation that we can be doing here while this is all running. We'll check on our pipelines real quick. It's nice and easy, fast, check on it, boom. You can see here that now our master branch before we did the fix is still passing, and now we're running our unit tests with our pass. So we can come back and check on that afterward. But I got this Docker file in there, and it seems like a huge waste of time, energy, resources to be doing all of these manual commands on, not the one I wanted, when I have this wonderful, nice little Docker file. You know, I don't really need to be building here and doing all of this with just this build page. I have a Docker file. Let's go ahead and use that Docker file to the best of its ability. So I'm going to go ahead, once again, for the sake of time, I'm going to edit this. I have in my little IDE my updated YAML. So let's go through here, and I'm going to go ahead and build an image. All right. So like I said, let's take advantage of that that the Docker image and the repository, because right now as I have it, as you saw, I pulled down the repository, so I cloned it, I ran my Docker file, was able to do that. But what happens in the meantime if my developer goes forward and updates something? I'm not going to have those changes again until I pull down my code again and rerun all my commands. There's got to be a better way to be more up to date with building images, using that images, and really testing against the latest and greatest version of the code. And we're going to do that by making it a part of our pipeline. So every time we run our tests and verify that our code is doing what it's doing, we're going to create that new Docker image for us, which will really allow us to be fast-paced and keep up and provide that fast feedback. So updated to create a Docker image and upload to our Docker registry. All right, so we're going to go ahead and, oh, there we go. Never fails that I always forget something. It gives me this nice little warning sign here. Let me go back here. We're going to do this. This is why you always have backups for backups. Aha, so the reason why it failed on us, which is always good to see it fails, it's a learning experience, is because notice I had a stage here as release, but I didn't have a stage defined up here. So I had changed the name from build to release. So let's go ahead and name that release, and commit those changes. Haha, yay. So now it's nice, valid, going through. Let's go back to our pipelines here and just kind of see how things are going. So even here, it showed us where we were invalid. It keeps really track of everything. I fixed my unit test. This is fabulous. So now this is all passed. And I fixed my mistake with stage name. So that's all running and all beautiful. So now that I've fixed all of this, let's go ahead and I want to make sure that all of my changes are put back into the master branch so everybody can benefit from the wonderful fixed unit test. So I want to merge my dev into master and it's green. So that tells me that I should be able to go in and merge everything. I'll submit that and I'm also going to approve it. This will also allow you to do, so this is where your merge requests and your pull requests come in, because now what I can do, if I had other developers on the team, they can see, oh, great. This is the pipeline. The pipeline's already passed. They can go in, they can look at the pipeline, and they can look at the commit. They can provide comments, feedbacks, everything like that. Because I am awesome and a one-person team, I'm going to say, yay, go ahead and merge. So now everything is going to be back into master. If I go into master and I look at my main go test, this is awesome. It has been updated to anonymous. Everything is right with the world. So I was able to do a new feature development. I was able to write a new test. I was able to fix that test all without compromising that master main pipeline. Now I'm going to switch over here. Let me see where my pipelines are at. And while I'm switching over and doing this, I'm gonna remind you guys that we have about 13 minutes left. I wanna make sure that you guys have time for any questions. So I'm gonna continue through this. I'm working through as fast as I can. There's so much information here, so much good information here, but make sure you start typing your questions now. You know, this is the work where your devs say, I'm waiting for my code to compile. So let's get some of those questions in. So we've got our master going. We fixed the mistake here. This is building my image. It's going through, and if you see here in the logs, which I love, you got all of your logs here, you'll see it's going through the same steps as it did when I was running locally. So here's your your image, all of those same things that I was doing locally now can be done all in my pipeline. And now it's actually doing a Docker push, which means it's going to go into my Docker registry. So why do I care about that? I'm going to wait for this to package up, and let's see if it's in here yet. Aha, this is why I care, because now I have this awesome Docker image, and once that finishes, I'm going to have this registry which already has the built images, and I know those images have already gone through my unit testing. So it's keeping up to date. Every time my dev commits, updates, anything like that, that new image is going to be available for me as a tester to use. So I don't have to worry about cloning anything, making sure I am up to date with what's been checked into the repository, because I have my automated pipeline, and I've got this Docker image. So I'm going to here, pipelines. I really want this to finish because I want to show you the awesomeness that is with this. But like everything, it takes a little while to get going. So as we do that, as that builds through, I'm kind of going to squirrel a little bit and show you one last powerful thing of Git and branches and all these fun things. So let's say I want to run a test that's not there already. I can just open up a branch like my dev did, create my test in there. It'll run my pipeline. We saw how that automatically kicked off. I can do a merge request, things like that. And if you go to Docker, GitLab's kind of documentation, it'll walk you through all the powerful configurations that you have. So let's see. Awesome. So this finished. I should be able to go to my container registry now, and it should have a nice image. Boom. I tagged it with master because it's my master branch. I've got an image ID, got everything there. So what does this mean for me as a tester? Well, instead, before I was having to do my own Docker run, everything like build, run, make sure it's up to date. Now as a tester, I'm going to steal my pre-written commands and I'll walk you through this. So now I can do my Docker run, I can do an 8080, I can name it my instance, but look, it's pulling from the registry, my tutorials, Janna, welcome app master, that same tag here. So let's give this a go. Oh no. Oh. So this is the bad news about doing live demos too, is I didn't run through all of this, and so I'm gonna get some access denied because I haven't set up all of my tokens. But let's do this. I'm gonna do sample app. I should have a sample app master. There we go. So I pulled, I did this in another, I went through the whole whole webinar, of course, in a different registry and did the exact same thing. So I've got my Docker image, things like that, up, running. And as you can see now, if I go to localhost 8080 and update, woohoo, it's updated the time. So it's 15 seconds unknown, yada, yada, yada. So now I can run my test locally. I can keep up to date with those Docker images and everything is great. And I better stop there. There's so much more that I wish I could talk about. Maybe I'll talk to Paul and see if I can get a follow-up, but I want to give at least a couple minutes to get some questions in here.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Janna. I really appreciate that. And folks, if you don't know this, giving a live coding presentation is one of the most stressful things there is. Yeah. And you start, I mean, it is really, really tough. So I don't know if you're a programmer or if you have a lot of technical ability or you like to do demos or whatever else. If you're looking for a new challenge, you need to sit in front of some people and try to code in front of them and see what happens. 100 of your favorite friends and just see what happens.
Yes.
You notice how calm and collected Janna is and how confident she is. That only comes because you know, hey, nobody's going to throw anything at you over the webinar, right?
Exactly.
So she's done this enough times, and thank you so much. It takes a lot of nerve and a lot of steel to do what you did, and it's wonderful. So thank you so much. So a couple questions real quick. Yes. Matt says, what was the name of the Git command helper that you showed?
Oh yeah, that it's the Git Explorer. So it's just gitexplorer.com. I'm trying to think if I can send that in the chat or something for everybody.
Yeah, if you put that, and I actually already sent it in the chat, so we're good
perfect.
there.
Thank you.
So,
you're ahead of me.
Wassam says, do I need a YAML file for every repo, or can I have one common YAML file and parameterize it?
So the answer is yes and no. It depends on really what you want to do. The nice thing about, I know at least GitLab, I can speak to that, is that they allow you to do templates. So you can have one YAML per repository and then have a master YAML, or you can have multiple YAMLs. You can connect them all. There's different ways if you look through the powerful configuration. I highly recommend having one YAML per repository because I want to see the configuration for that type of code. It's kind of like keeping your unit test in with your code so you can really see, you know, these are the tests that I am running for this code. This is the configuration that I have for this code, and then you can call pipelines from one another, YAML files from one another. It's just it's endless. So it is really powerful.
Yeah, it is. That's great. And this was a really good introduction to it. I know a bunch of people mentioned on here, they're ready to go play with GitLab and with the CI/CD functions on
Yeah.
GitLab. I know when I first realized GitLab had this utility of continuous integration and continuous delivery, continuous deployment pipelines, I was ready to go play with it too. Is your repo available, or is there a repo available that folks could go look at and see running?
It's not, but I was going to make it public right after this webinar, so you can go
Oh,
through
excellent.
and see. So, yep.
Excellent. Would you mind popping that URL into the chat or possibly on the screen so when people go look for it after the recording is available, they can find it as well?
Yep, it's gitlab.com tutorials by Janna. So you can
Nice.
go in there and
GitLab.com/tutorials-by-Janna. Excellent.
yep.
Excellent. So yeah, a lot of positive feedback here. Everybody says you're nuts for doing this live, which is great. So one more here, Benedict, and I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, Benedict, mentions a Docker, and the question is about Docker. So does using Docker the way you have require the dev team to use Docker, or is it only for testing purposes?
Oh, it's for dev. It's for dev purposes. It's for testing purposes. It's for all the purposes. And if you're using it as a tester, your developers should be using it as well, and you should be using it in production. So it allows that consistency and that common kind of thread for all stages of the software development lifecycle.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's one of the things we miss so much is having a unified way of deploying code. And it's really nice to have that because when you have a test case fail and you have a unified way of deploying code and you go back and you say, okay, if it's failing on your machine, did you use Docker? Did you have it running against Docker? And they say no. You say, well, I'm not even going to spend time with you, right? I'm not going to spend time on that. Just use Docker and we'll make sure it works. On the other hand, if you have two machines that are using the very same image, the same Docker image, then you can tell, well, it's not a problem with the configuration if they both fail or if they both succeed, right?
Yep.
If one's different from the other, you know it's something other than that image that's done it. So a huge, and so many other great benefits as well, just being able to deploy anywhere and to any machine and to be able to spin up systems, virtual systems, wherever you want. It's really great containers.
Yeah, and you know, of course, like I said, there are many more things that I could do easily in this webinar. This is just scratching the surface of continuous integration. But one of the nice things about this is the same philosophies that I'm using, you can use for your continuous deployment. So right now I'm doing the test release with tests and branching. That's the exact same thing you're going to do with your deployment. It's just going to be a different stage and a different job and a different task. So get your feet wet with maybe some unit tests, some little things here, and then move on to what it looks like for continuous development and delivery and deployment and all the CDs that you want to define. The nice thing about GitLab too is they've made it super easy for you. They have actually even auto DevOps. So if you go in and go through and do a Kubernetes cluster, which they guide you through in your UI, you just have to have a Google account, Google console account, and it will automatically create this YAML file for you and take you through all the stages, everything like that. So
Yeah, and I think Docker is one of those things that seems so scary, but really, if you sit down, if you have a Saturday afternoon that you can put into it, 2, 3, 4 hours and go through a good tutorial, even on the docker.com site, you can learn a lot in a short period of time and be up to speed and ready to go. So,
and I think, don't you have a webinar on Docker too? Did you
I
do
don't
one
think I
yet?
have one. I need one. I need one.
Ooh.
So, so if you guys want Janna to do that, let me know and we'll get that set up. A couple other questions here. One was, is GitLab free to use?
Yes, everything that I did today was free.
Excellent. And maybe let's see, is the webinar available? Yes. So what we do is we record every one of these webinars. It's being recorded right now. It's going to be available on beaufortfairmont.com/webinars and also at the link that you have right now. So either way, beaufortfairmont.com/webinars or the link that you used to get here, either one of those will work. So how you feeling? You did a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My face is all red from the stress, but we're good.
You know what? That's the way that it goes. I'm trying to figure out how to grab the screen back here. But a wonderful job. Thank you so much for doing that. If I can figure out, here we go. Let's see, this should make me presenter. There we go.
Yes, there we go.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here once again. I want to know, Janna, I don't know if you want to know, but I always like to know who won the
Oh, I
Amazon
wanted to
gift
definitely want to know.
So the winner of the Amazon gift card is Jeff J. So if your last
Ooh.
name starts with a J and your first name is Jeff, and that's the way you registered, Jeff J, you are the winner. And how that works is you will receive an email from Beaufort Fairmont through Amazon, and you'll get an electronic Amazon gift card for $50. So use it wisely. Thank you all so much for being here. As you know, Beaufort Fairmont focuses on test automation and helping your teams with test automation. So when you need people to help you, when you need a plan to get past the troubles or challenges that you have today, or the ones that you see coming down the road, or if you want to know about the challenges you don't see, give us a yell and we'd be happy to help. We love doing training as well. It's a wonderful place to get people started with tools, methods, and other open source type methods and tools out there. So thank you so much. Reach out to me directly about that if you'd like to. I always like to hear about your challenges, so make sure to send them my way. Thanks so much for your time today. Janna, thanks for your time, and
Yep,
we'll see everyone soon.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Bye.